One of the great ironies of the administration is President Trump loves to sort of fake people out, if you will, while he's doing something he doesn't like or we wouldn't like. For example, for 56 times he's talked about the deep state, the deep state. While at the same time, it appears he might be building such a deep state. For example, the Washington Post reported that the former chief data officer for Social Security Administration has said that Elon Musk and his Doge gang copied a mainframe database containing the personal information of hundreds of millions of Americans, including names, birthday, addresses, and more. In fact, if you step back, Doge has pilfered information in every federal agency. And we're in a situation where I believe Trump is prepared to weaponize that information against the American people in so many different ways. And I just asked, did you fear my distress that Trump could use this information to attack his opponents? Could he use this information to disrupt the elections in 26 as a path to further authoritarian influence in the United States?
I say to my colleague from Rhode Island that when an authoritarian president starts collecting data in this fashion, they probably have a plan for it. And that plan is not going to be one to enhance liberty for the American people. One of the things that I'm deeply concerned about, and I'm not sure if this is the same database you're referring to, but it's a collection of voter registration databases. Is that the same? Yeah, from across the country. And
Senator would yield.
Yes, I will yield for a question.
Doge, in my observation of the activities, has pilfered information from every major federal organization, and the Social Security Administration, a former employee, has indicated they've taken the most critical files that have detailed information on every American. And I think you're right. There's only two things you really do with this kind of data. You sell it or you weaponize it, or you do both. And the concern, I think we both share, is weaponization. In addition, I believe that the administration has sought from secretaries of state throughout the United States information about their voting rolls, which is specifically directed perhaps at electoral interference, but I shall wheel back.
That clarification of the question. And it is absolutely concerning. You can imagine the many ways it can be weaponized. Like any hostile agent from outside the United States can use that data in all kinds of ways. What happens if suddenly your Social Security benefits aren't there, or the files regarding your disability benefits, or your age and birth records, or who knows what all could disappear or be modified, or banking records possibly included if you've had banking transactions in paying your taxes, or it could be incredible amounts of stuff. And we have had fairly protective practices of these databases, which is why when Doge went in with laptops, there was a lot of resistance, and some people who provided that resistance, got moved aside physically to enable Doge to access. And then there's this other database effort, which is the voting registration database effort. And the idea of collecting that, and they've been pushing the Secretary of States. Many states have said no, they're going to court, they're resisting. Well, thank goodness they are, because a national registration voter database can be used just like a state could purge names from it, which several states have done, saying, oh, these names look the same. Maybe it's like you got two Jack Ryans, or more commonly, it's done to Hispanic names. Or said, well, hey, there's the same name in Georgia as there is in Mississippi, so we'll purge this name. I mean, hostile purging that people don't know that they're no longer registered until they go to the poll to vote, and it's often too late. So I'm very, very concerned. I want our states to maintain their own independent voting registration databases, because that would be a phenomenal way to manipulate the next election. And I used to, and I say used, like months ago in February, when people in my town hall would say, aren't you worried about an effort to postpone the next election or declare an emergency? And I said, no, I just can't imagine that taking place. Now I can imagine that taking place, because we've seen emergency measures abused. We've seen the president assume powers he does not have. For example, the tariff power is not delegated to the president. It's always been done by law here in this chamber and down the hall. So when the president is that authoritarian, taking powers the law doesn't grant, arguing in court, the court's giving him more power, consolidating information on voting, I am very, very worried about that. And I want to encourage the Secretary of States in every state, whether you're a blue state or a red state, hold on to your data, protect it, back it up, double secure it, and tell the feds to keep their hands off.
Well, I concur. If I may raise one very brief question, that is...
Yes, I yield for additional question.
You see firsthand what's happening in Portland. It is outrageous. The situation has been completely distorted by the president to suggest that there is major civil upheaval, and that's not the case at all from the reports I've heard. And it also, by suggesting that military personnel can enforce the laws of the United States, violates the Posse Comitatus Act, which has been a barrier to police powers by the military since the 1870s. And I know, like myself, I assume you are particularly disturbed that he is, again, not only weaponizing data, he's weaponizing our military forces to go in and carry out civil laws. And your comments, Mr.
Yes. In regard to your question, I am extremely worried about the Trump administration's effort to pave the path with the courts and with the discipline of the military to have them in the practice of being deployed to, if you will, to, well, in theory, quell unrest. But the law on Title X is very clear. You need to have a rebellion or you need to have invasion. And it's very clear you don't have either of those. But even then, 2 judges on the 3-judge panel in this court said, well, let's kind of give a little more flexible definition of rebellion. And by the way, maybe you should give more deference to the president's evaluation. After all, they run the building. And I'm like, once you say the president can simply declare there's a rebellion, then the standard set in law means nothing. You're just throwing open the doors to a authoritarian president deploying troops against the American people. And we've already seen with the provocative actions of assaults on peaceful protesters how dangerous that is. And then, of course, the Insurrection Act, as an exception to Posse Comitatus, is extremely scary because it explicitly has in the law a certain interpretation by the president, or deference to an interpretation by the president. The core assumption was that a person in that position would always be a person who had high regard for the Constitution and for the boundaries and for the liberties and for the freedom and would defend it like with their whole heart, mind, and soul. But that is not a person we have in the Oval Office today. So I do support efforts that a number of folks, and I believe you might be well involved in, striving to plug some of those loopholes so that that power does not get deployed.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. And I note that we have a senator from Wisconsin, and I would be happy to yield for a question if she had one.
During remarks on the Senate floor Wednesday, Senator Jack Reed, Democrat Rhode Island, and Senator Jeff Merkley, Democrat Oregon, sounded a warning about what they described as the Trump administration's steady march towards authoritarian rule. Both senators expressed deep concern over the administration's growing concentration of power, misuse of federal agencies, and potential manipulation of sensitive government data. Senator Merkley began by urging his colleagues and the public to ring the alarm bells, to alert Americans about what he views as a dangerous erosion of democratic norms. He argued that the administration's actions represent a series of calculated steps to consolidate power beyond the limits of the law. Senator Reid commended Merkley's courage and conscience, saying he was right to highlight a grave situation that threatened the nation's constitutional framework. The two senators discussed alarming reports that individuals tied to Elon Musk and his Doge gang allegedly accessed a mainframe database from the Social Security Administration containing personal information on hundreds of millions of Americans. They suggested that this data theft could serve as a tool for political manipulation. There are only two things you can do with that kind of data. You sell it or you weaponize it, Senator Reid warned, suggesting that the Trump administration could use it to target opponents or interfere with upcoming elections. Merkley echoed those concerns, pointing to the administration's attempts to collect voter registration data from secretaries of state across the country. He argued that a centralized voter database could enable large-scale manipulation of voter rolls, such as the purging of names under false pretenses, an act that could disenfranchise countless citizens without their knowledge. The senators also raised fears that the administration might exploit emergency powers to postpone or undermine the next election. Merkley, who once dismissed such claims as unlikely, said he now found them plausible given what he described as the president's repeated abuse of authority. When a president begins assuming powers not granted by law, and the courts continue to expand that power, we're entering dangerous territory, he warned. Both senators called on state election officials to safeguard their data and resist federal pressure to share it. Merkley urged states to back it up, double secure it, and tell the feds to keep their hands off. Reid then turned to another concern, the administration's deployment of federal forces in Portland, Oregon. He called the move an outrage and a clear violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the use of the military for domestic law enforcement. He argued that by militarizing law enforcement, the administration was once again testing the boundaries of lawful authority. Merkley agreed, warning that recent court rulings had dangerously expanded the president's ability to declare a rebellion and deploy troops domestically. Once you say the president can simply declare there's a rebellion, then the standard set in law means nothing, he said. You're throwing open the doors to an authoritarian president deploying troops against the American people. Both lawmakers concluded that the country faces an urgent need to strengthen the legal barriers against executive overreach. They endorsed ongoing efforts in Congress to reform the Insurrection Act and prevent any future administration from using the military or federal data to undermine democracy.